These days, one of the most dominant topics not only in Turkish politics but also in global political discussions is immigration. Whether driven by economic, political, or globally impactful factors such as the climate crisis, the issue of immigration has become one of the most prominent items on the agenda worldwide. It is also clear that this topic will remain at the forefront for a long time. In both North America and Western Europe, immigrant populations make up a significant portion of society. For instance, the young and young adult generation currently referred to as Generation Z stands out as the most ethnically and racially diverse generation to date. Half of this generation comes from various ethnic or racial backgrounds. Beyond this, particularly in aging Europe, there is a growing need for new immigrants, both to sustain the current economy and to rejuvenate the population. Moreover, Europe remains an important center of attraction for new potential immigrants. We read almost daily about the tragedies faced by African, Asian, and Middle Eastern migrants trying to reach the continent. Migrants are seen as both needed and unwanted. Countries in need of immigrants are adopting selective policies, giving the green light to those who meet their criteria. As we have recently observed in the elections in the United States and Germany, a new understanding of democracy is shaping Western societies. Within this broader context, immigration is one of the key social factors driving the emergence and rise of competitive authoritarian democracies. Whether a political party opposes or embraces immigration is now one of the main determinants of voter preference. Immigration also deeply affects and shapes the lives and mindsets of young people in our country. Young people aged 15 to 24, who make up around 15% of Turkey's population, appear at first glance to be content living in the country. A 2024 study by Sear Insight, which replicated a 2017 survey with 2,000 participants, shows that the majority of young people are satisfied with life in Turkey. However, as in many areas, initial responses should not be taken at face value and must be evaluated in stages. When asked directly, 82% of young people say they are satisfied living in Turkey. This is a 7-point increase from 7 years ago. Yet, a closer look reveals a qualitative shift. The proportion of youth who say they are very satisfied has dropped from 19% to 4%, while those who are simply satisfied has risen from 56% to 78%. Beyond this qualitative change, looking at who is more content living in Turkey reveals that young women are generally more satisfied than young men, and those aged 15 to 19 are more content than those aged 20 to 24. The group with the lowest level of satisfaction is young people who both study and work. When we evaluate youth satisfaction in a comparative context, their view of the country becomes clearer. The proportion of young people who believe that life in Turkey is better than in Europe, the USA, or Middle Eastern countries remains similar to 7 years ago. About 46% think life in Turkey is better than in Europe, and 41% think it is better than in the USA and the Middle East. On the other hand, 38% believe Turkey has worse living conditions than the USA, 36% say it is worse than Europe, and 12% believe it is worse than the Middle East. These figures have risen significantly compared to 7 years ago. As these numbers clearly show, a substantial segment of young people has lost confidence in living conditions in Turkey. As a result of concerns about life in Turkey in the future, 30% of young people in the country express a desire to live abroad. Different studies and personal stories from young people who want to study or work abroad are increasingly common. The fact that 1/3 of youth want to build a future overseas is a noteworthy figure for any country. Those considering emigration are mainly men and young people aged 20 to 24. Particularly, those who study and work simultaneously, and those from lower and lower middle socioeconomic classes, are more likely to want to leave. 1 in 4 from upper socioeconomic classes also wants to move abroad. The most important reasons for wanting to move are earning money and pursuing education. While those from upper and upper middle classes are primarily motivated by education, those from lower classes view working and earning income abroad as a key option. Germany tops the list of preferred destinations, followed by the United States and the United Kingdom in similar proportions. Young people are motivated by various factors to start a new life abroad. However, the idea of becoming an immigrant makes them uneasy. Around half of those who want to go abroad feel anxious about the idea of being an immigrant. The most anxious are young people from upper and upper middle classes, while those from lower classes are the least worried. These youth seem more open to starting anew, feeling they have nothing much to lose. The main reasons for this fear of becoming immigrants include declining tolerance towards immigrants in Western societies and the increasing incidence of violence against them. In addition, the rise of far-right politics and anti-immigrant policies also raise concern among young people. One of the biggest factors slowing down the desire to move abroad is the anxiety over becoming an immigrant, an anxiety that is largely shaped by attitudes towards migrants and refugees in Turkey. It is no secret that society in Turkey is generally unhappy with migrants and refugees, and anti-refugee sentiment is widespread. In surveys addressing Turkey's most pressing issues, migrants and refugees consistently rank among the top 4 problems. Turkey's youth share similar views to the general population and tend to view migrants and refugees negatively, expressing that they do not want them in the country. Anti-refugee sentiment is very common among the young population. For example, 2/3 of youth believe that Turkey should under no circumstances accept Syrian refugees or migrants. 7 years ago, this was only 4 in 10. Similarly, the proportion of youth who supported granting equal citizenship rights to Syrians has dropped from 20% to just 2%. 7 years ago, 43% of youth believed Turkish citizens should be hired instead of migrants. Today, this number has risen to 70%. Anti-refugee and anti-immigrant attitudes are most clearly expressed through the rising nationalist ideology among youth. Today, the 4 most common political identities among young people are nationalism, Kemalism, conservatism, and Islamism. While Kemalism retains its former strength, nationalism and conservatism are on the rise, whereas Islamism is not as popular as in previous years. Currently, 34% of young people identify as nationalist and 33% as Kemalist. The widespread desire among young people to leave the country undoubtedly signals serious problems for Turkey's future. The weakening of young people's sense of belonging implies a loss of educated and qualified individuals, those who are meant to build the country's future. Poverty is not only an economic reality, the outward movement of young people also reflects another kind of impoverishment. In an aging country like ours, the emigration of young people will further unbalance the age distribution and lead to labor shortages across all sectors in the long term. Losses from the nation's talent pool will be one of the greatest obstacles to the country's sociological self-renewal. These losses could also deepen socio-economic inequalities and lead to new social problems. Creating an environment that encourages young people to stay in the country has become a necessity for Turkey's prosperity and stability. The demands of young people are very clear. What matters now is to listen and create the appropriate social conditions in response.